The ongoing insurrection is where we begin this hour. The member of the 1-6 Select Committee, Congressman-elect Adam Schiff. Do you think we will call you Congressman Schiff again by this time tomorrow?
I certainly hope so. The business of the country needs to move forward. I'm desperately concerned, though, with all of the concessions that McCarthy has made to these hardliners, all with the object of giving him the title Speaker without the powers to conduct that office. And I'm afraid it's a harbinger of what we're going to see. Going from crisis to crisis, we may risk a default on our national debt. We may have prolonged government shutdowns. This group can, essentially hold Kevin McCarthy hostage at any time. And so I'm worried what it means for the country's future that there is such disarray within the Republican Party. But you're exactly right, Nicole. Kevin McCarthy is reaping what he sowed when he supported voting against certifying the last election, when he resurrected Donald Trump, when he really catered to this extreme element in the GOP.
You know, and what's so, I don't want to use a word to connote anything positive, but what's so vexing, I guess, about Kevin McCarthy is that on that day, he saw Trump's role in the incitement of the insurrection the same way I know Liz Cheney has, the same way you have, the same way I did. And what seems to have done so much damage to the body and to democracy by extension is the contortion around it. Do you have a preference, or do you have a view on whether or not are you rooting for him to continue to whip the vote? Do you have a position on who becomes the Republican leader and then the Speaker?
You know, I would like it at the end of the day to be someone decent, someone who has a core set of values, and that shouldn't be too much to ask. I think in Kevin McCarthy's case, that is too much to ask. And so I hope it is someone else. I think there are other people that the Republican Party could coalesce around, that even though I would disagree strongly with them on issues, at least they would be people that could be trusted, by their own members and hopefully by Democrats if they earn that trust. But I don't think that's Kevin McCarthy. So I'm a firm believer that we need at least two functional parties in the country. We don't have that at the moment. We have only one functional party. But I would like to see the Republican Party return to its roots of a party of a conservative ideology. Frankly, I'd be happy if it became a party of any ideology. But right now, it's led by these chaos agents, and that just doesn't portend well for the next 2 years.
What image of the country has been transmitted to sort of the streams of information and intelligence being gobbled up by our adversaries this week? What do they see as our ongoing vulnerabilities and weaknesses in our democracy?
Well, Nicole, I can only imagine, because one of the outcomes of this lack of a speakership, lack of being sworn in, is members can't go get classified briefings on exactly that. But given what we've seen in the past, given what we know of how foreign powers exploited our tragedy of January 6th, how they pushed out those images, how they used it, how China, for example, used it to make the case that democracy doesn't work, that it's brittle, that it can't adapt to the times, that the China model was somehow to be preferred. China model is dictatorship. It's totalitarianism. That is not an alternative. But the more that our adversaries can showcase American governmental dysfunction, the harder it is for us to promote democracy abroad when we are exhibiting such shortcomings at home. And, it's been moving for all of us to be at the Capitol today on the anniversary of January 6th. It has reminded me of one of the very strong emotions I had that day, which was in thinking about how the rest of the world was viewing America and our democracy, and how much the very idea of our country was being lost. And I felt that way again today, and not just because it was the anniversary, but because of what I was witnessing on the House floor.
On this anniversary, we had a chance to speak to Officer Harry Dunn, who won the civilian medal today from the president. And he noted the amount of time it's taken for any accountability in our judicial system for Donald Trump and his inner circle. Now, in the days since the insurrection, a bipartisan commission was pitched It gained support. It was then killed by Republican leaders, and in its ashes rose up the January 6th Select Committee, which was formed, staffed, initiated an investigation, conducted an investigation, televised public hearings, wrote a report, and has now been disbanded, no longer exists. Why hasn't there been any action from the Department of Justice in the time that all of that was able to transpire in terms of holding Donald Trump and his inner circle legally, criminally accountable?
It's an excellent question, and I can really only speculate as to the answer because the Justice Department is not going to tell Congress why it has been so slow to act. But I think while they move with alacrity against those who broke into the building and assaulted police officers that day, they were very slow to work against the ringleaders, very slow to work against the multiple lines of effort that didn't involve explicitly the violence of that day, but involved the president on the phone with the Secretary of State in Georgia, basically demanding that he find 11,780 votes that didn't exist, and other lines of effort to overturn the election. There's no reason why Congress should have finished its investigation before the Justice Department that can move so much more quickly, that can enforce its subpoenas so much more easily than we can. But I do think that the caution of the department is in part a response to Bill Barr's terrible politicization of the department and a desire to avoid controversy and to move away from any suggestion that it was following in that terrible model. But taken to an extreme, that caution becomes a form of immunity for the former president and his enablers. And that, to me, is the far greater danger to our democracy at this point. Yes, prosecuting a former president is unprecedented, but so were the crimes committed by this former president. And not prosecuting when the evidence supports it is, I think, the far greater danger to the country.
The committee members, four of your former committee members, are no longer in the body. Congresswoman Elaine Luria is one of them. She just said that she's ready to be investigated. You have triggered the insurrection-adjacent right for years since leading the first impeachment, and that was a role reversal. I'm old enough to remember a time in politics when Republicans sought your insights on foreign policy questions and national security matters. What are you preparing for as Kevin McCarthy has just given away the keys to, I don't know if we still call it a kingdom, I guess we do, out of reverence to the institution, and they're gunning for you to investigate you?
Yeah, well, I know Kevin McCarthy, one of his first concessions to the right was to promise to remove me from the Intelligence Committee. They want to, I think, try to neuter any vigorous oversight of what they do, anyone who will stand up to Trump and to his enablers in the Congress and outside the Congress. But frankly, I'm far more concerned not about what they do with my, service on the Intelligence Committee, but rather what they do in 2 years from now if we have another close election. The last one really wasn't that close, but if it comes down to a single state next time, and it comes down to an interpretation of the Electoral Count Act, or they succeed in getting a state legislature to certify a slate that lost in the state with a, sort of unilateral and bogus declaration of fraud. That's what worries me. That's what should worry all Americans. I will be prepared for whatever they come after me with. It can't be worse than what Donald Trump tried. But nonetheless, the far greater concern is what they do to our institutions and what they do after the next election.
Congressman-elect, I truly hope that next time we talk to you, you are once again Congressman Adam Schiff. Thank you very much for starting us off on this truly historic day. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
As members of Congress remembered